everybody this evening to the meeting of August 31st. And I will officially call this meeting to order, and I'll ask Angie Hester if she would lead us in the invocation, please.
Let's bow our heads. Father God, I pray during these times of conflict and hostility that you remind us of who you are and what you are about, which is love. Father, help us to be examples of what compassion is, and let the love of Jesus show through us so that others will seek you and know the peace that comes with the grace that you give so freely. Father, we lift up little Destiny and her family. They have reached so many as warriors for your kingdom through this journey. We know you are still in the miracle business, and we ask for one for Destiny. Father, please put a hedge of protection around Pelham and unite us as one community with common goals. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Angie. Chief, if you'd lead us in the pledge of allegiance, please. Yes, sir.
Attention, salute, pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Beverly, if you would record the attendance, please.
Board President, all board members are present.
Thank you, Beverly. That leads us to item 5, which is the adoption of the agenda and approval of the minutes of the financial statement. If you look at what you have, you should have the agenda for tonight's meeting, August 31st, 2020, as well as the minutes for the special board meeting of August 10th, 2020, and the minutes for the regular Board of Education meeting of July 27th, as well as the financial statements for July of 2020. Are there any questions on any of these? Does anyone have a desire to have these read in their entirety? There being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve in a second.
I move.
Second.
So moving and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that is passed. That gets us to item 6, Panther Pride, and I'll turn that over to Dr. Cofield.
No formal recognitions tonight to the board. I would say that I'm extremely proud of getting around to all the schools, see all the work. Just good to see all the kids back, even if there's an abbreviated schedule, and all the teachers, and that's always just a really good feeling to get around and seeing everyone. So hopefully we can get back to we can start celebrating students and their accomplishments, but none tonight. Moving on, we'll go to personnel recommendations. In front of the board this evening, I have 11. There are 12 recommendations. 11 recommendations are coming from me. We have the resignation of Mr. Powell, who's one of our trades people. Mr. Powell is an electrician. We wish him the best in retirement and to see him go. Item 3 is approving the employment of his replacement. Item 2 is also approving a custodian at Pelham Ridge. We have another teacher. The last teaching slot that we had open, I believe, is being filled at Pelham Park Middle School, an ESL teacher. Item 5 is a bus driver, a half-route bus driver for someone who retired. I'm excited about number 6. This is, we wrote a grant from the State Department of Education, and we're using some at-risk funds. This is to approve a mental health coordinator for Pelham City Schools. Of course, mental health is a growing issue, has been in schools in our society for some time. We have been contracting with Central Alabama Wellness to provide mental health workers in our schools, and that has worked. However, there's been a lot of turnover. Mrs. Nepson has been one of the people who has been in our school and done very well respected by our staff members. Does a really good job. This will make her our employee as our mental health coordinator to coordinate all mental health services. That is, I think this will be a big positive for all of our schools and bring some cohesiveness that we've maybe been lacking. We've got some part-time agreements for retired educators who are still working with us, Mr. Dixon, Mrs. Harrison, and Chef Allen. We're excited to have all those back, even if it's part-time. And items 10 and 11 are just to provide a little compensation for 2 of our employees for helping with supervised tryouts. So items 1 through 11 being recommended by me tonight.
All right, we do have the superintendent's recommendations on those 11 items. We'll entertain a motion to approve and a second.
I'll make a
Move to
motion. We
approve.
approve.
I'll
Second.
Somebody will second.
Okay, we have several approvals and seconds.
We have approved.
We are under discussion. Anybody have anything? There being none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And those pass unanimously. I would direct your attention to item 12 under personnel. And is the next thing on the agenda. We want to review and take into consideration the level 3 grievance appeal of the superintendent's July 8th, 2020 level 2 decision. The board's procedures provide options and latitude. I think we've looked at all those. I think we're all very much aware of that for processing these types of appeals. Board members have had the benefit of receiving the materials in advance of this meeting and ample time to review the materials. With all this in mind, is there a proposal for a motion?
Mr. President, based on the materials that have been received, I believe the record is sufficiently developed, and I do not believe any further steps are needed or appropriate for the board to act on this appeal. In light of this, I move to approve and affirm the superintendent's level 2 decision.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We are under discussion.
You know, the only thing I would say is that the agreement has presented some interesting points. Nothing that I can see clearly indicates wrongdoing on anybody's part, but has indicated a couple things of interest that we've talked about maybe addressing in board training to help us better understand those points. But
I think that's a very fair observation. You know, the assignment of classes and those kind of things are always very difficult. We do have a process that we go through. We do have a process in determining how many teachers we assign at kindergarten through 12th grade versus content. It can be a very labor-intensive process and trying to get everyone scheduled with the right number of kids and the right classes and all those kinds of things. And these kinds of things do come up from time to time. I absolutely understand the board's desire to learn more about that process. I'll be more than willing. We'll begin, of course, sharing with y'all all those things because it all helps us all with a better understanding of those processes that we go through. So we can certainly set up that without any problems.
I would just like to add that, I mean, veteran teachers are important, and the opportunity that I think this particular assignment gives is for students in the last year of their high school career to gain the wisdom of experience, which will help them as they move on to college. So I think there's a lot of pluses in this for the students involved, and I think the board is here to learn more about how this process works. Any other discussion? There being none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes unanimously.
Okay, we have, there's no unfinished business. That moves on to the superintendent's report. And so let's jump right in. I think that we also, we got two big issues. Of course, COVID and all the issues related to COVID and all the decisions that we have to make. We also have the budget hearing. We spent a lot of time this morning on budgets, just a little bit of time on COVID. We're going to spend most of our time tonight related to COVID. But after we get finished with this, we will have a brief budget hearing. But we're going to take, because I know everyone's certainly interested in wanting to know, about those things. So let me get organized and find my material. So related to that, I think there are probably two main things that we need to talk about, in my opinion. One, where are we now? And what are the issues or the things that we need to discuss and talk about? And the other main thing is, where are we going? I think those are the two big things. So I'm going to first start talking about where we are now, and then we'll end our discussions later on about where we're going. So Just to bring attention, I think it's good that we're being live streamed, and I'm hoping that everyone's hearing everything so that we have an opportunity. I attempted on Friday to send out a communication to answer some of the questions, but I just want to note that this summer, of course, this has been a very trying time, of course, for everyone. We certainly had a plan, and all of our trainings and communications were geared towards that plan, but that plan was basically to bring our kids back to school, to mask up. We knew that in certain situations we could not abide by the 6-foot rule. So the plan was to mask up to bring everybody to school, and that's the path that we were on. The Department of Public Health, I went back and looked today on their August 4th guidance. Also, I think I sent out a communication on August the 6th. Really made us to reverse and change course. Because there was that, you know, essentially the 6 foot was going to take precedence over everything. And the fact that if there were symptoms, if children or kids in classrooms were showing symptoms, then basically quarantines would have to start. And so we got into this thing about how is it going to be possible for us to have school without having massive amounts of quarantines, and what is the best method for us to keep school open. And so that is when on August the 6th, we put out the communication that we had made the decision to go to the staggered schedule. It is in the staggered schedule that we are able to keep people 6 feet apart. And we hope, so far our numbers have stayed low. We're going to talk about that in a little bit later. But in the staggered schedule, it does allow us to keep that 6 feet of distance. So we also had lots of discussion about the curriculum. So in the communication that I sent on Friday, I'll address just a couple of things to the board. First, regarding health and safety. Been very pleased with what I've observed in the schools. Our parents have done a great job with their kids. They've prepared them. Our kids are wearing masks. I've not seen one teacher have to get on to one student or have to remind a student to put your mask on as they're traveling throughout in the halls. They're doing a tremendous job with that. The procedures, all those things, you know, are in place. So I've been very pleased with that. I mentioned transportation. We need to thank our families. We asked at the beginning of the year if people could self-transport for them to do so. Our buses are not crowded. So most of our people have taken us up on that, and that has allowed us so far to spread out the buses. I don't see any issues related to crowding. We have some concerns about scheduling. You know, even in a normal year, the first 2 weeks of the school year are tough related to schedules. We do put schedules out there. We do tell Sharon that we're going to be at her house at 6:45 to try to pick up her kid. The first couple of weeks, that's always tough as things get moved around. This year we ran into some issues where, because we don't have as many kids, sometimes the schedules are being a little ahead of schedule. So we missed some of those things. We're working on those things. We do need people to understand, though, as the year progresses with the bus schedule, this year more than any time, there's probably a high degree of probability that won't be perfect. So give us a little bit of leeway on that. Blended students was another thing that came up because of the busing. We made the decision early on that we would not in the beginning, that blended students were going to have to provide their own transportation until we at least looked at the numbers. We're still not allowing blended students during the day. We're not going to run buses back and forth during the day. However, if they do have a class first period, or at the end of the day 7th period, after looking at our numbers, that is something that we can accommodate. And we've made that change, and the principals have been notified at the middle school and the high school. Internet access was another issue that we've heard. I think we've got that fixed day one. We've already added some wireless access points. I've not heard any more concerns about that. Edgenuity service disruption. I think there were 2 days where there were issues. We've not had issues with Edgenuity in the past related to that. That's not on our end. That is on their end. And I do think any service provider that you use, especially when there's massive amounts of people across the nation using more of that, you know, that's not surprising, but we've not had any issues as far as I know since those 2 days. Edgenuity, the curriculum design of Edgenuity seems to be a hot topic. We've had lots of discussions about that, so I want to go into a little more detail about that. Of course, Edgenuity has several different components. It has a courseware program for middle and high school. It has the elementary program, which the name's escaping me right now. Odyssey-ware, and we have a Spark program in our kindergarten. So this program, last year, of course, first of all, Edgenuity is a program that we've been using in our remote learning program for 2 years now, in our Pathway program. It is a program that we didn't begin our remote learning with. It's one that we've evolved to as we found it to be the most effective program. It is based on standards. The thing I think that we like most about the Edgenuity content is its adaptability. We can take things in and take things out, move things around, so it's much more adaptable if we're providing services for a special ed student, we're providing services for the ELL student, if we're providing services for kids who are working in a different accelerated path. This program gives us the ability to manipulate that data. Some programs, you don't have that flexibility. You just get on and you work through the program. It is a much more rigorous program than, last year when we left and went home and we were all scrambling, I think one of the concerns we heard was maybe there's the content and stuff that we were pushing out maybe wasn't rigorous enough. Well, now we've got kind of the flip side of that. And so this is a rigorous program. We are aware, though, that there are pacing and rigor issues that may overwhelm some of our students. And a lot of that has to do with the pacing that we set. At what point in the year are we going to be to what standard? And that creates some issues. However, I know that our staff has been having conversations about that. I know our teachers are having conversations about that. I am not concerned that that's an issue that we can't get fixed. I know that we have some kids who are stressing out because maybe the pace of their work is showing a percentage that's way below what they're used to working at. So there's a little panic there, oh no, I'm at 46%, 46 is an F, and I'm a B student or an A student, and those kinds of things. Please understand, we're not going to put anybody, all of our kids on a program and come out and have a lower success rate than that they would traditionally have if they were in school. So we're going to constantly keep adjusting that pace and that rigor to make sure that we get that right. And so I feel pretty good that we can continue to manipulate our teachers and our staff and continue to work with that to make it work. The question about additional students using the online platform while at school, I think this is a very valid concern. This is something that we've realized that we did not think about probably before we started. So the issue is that, now first of all, let me say that we had lots of discussions about Edgenuity for everyone. Our concern, though, when we looked at especially the Department of Public Health's guidelines on the 6 foot of spacing, so was that a sign from God or what?
Lights are about to go out.
I lost my train of thought. The question is, what was the sign?
Yeah, lights are going out just in 10 minutes.
One reason that we looked at how can we, because we are really concerned this year that there's going to be times or opportunities where we're really not going to know what kids are in our classroom. There are going to be times if you're a traditional kid, you're at school, but what happens if you're quarantined or someone in the family has COVID and you're out for 2 weeks? And we think there's a possibility, especially if we go back to school and we can't appropriately pace for 6 weeks. We know that that's going to happen at a higher rate. So we had this concern about how do we provide consistency as kids are going home for weeks at a time, going back. A bigger issue, a bigger concern that a lot of people don't think about is the thing related to our staff. What happens when the teachers are out for 2 weeks at a time or longer? How do we provide that consistency? So Edgenuity thought process about providing is the framework for all kids is that no matter what happens, if a kid's a remote learner or if a kid's a traditional learner, if they're quarantined, or if the teacher's out, it provides us a consistent framework so that the work continues regardless of the situation. So that was our mindset and our rationale. Now, the biggest issue that's really stressing people out, and we are working on it, is the fact that if the kid comes to school and they're a traditional student, and the teacher gets up and teaches, and the kid's not working, the kid's having to do the work, whatever is in the teacher's classroom, but then they're also having to go home and do the work of Edgenuity, which is doubling the amount of time that some of the kids are having to work. And that's really stressing people out. We know that. We're working on that. We don't want that to continue. That's a problem that we've got to get fixed. But I'm confident that our people understand that that's the problem and that they're working on it. So I feel good that there will be some solutions to that. Teacher availability for remote learners. Oh, let me go back to, there's also this concern. This is a big one. And this one hits, hard. I mean, it's to our heart because this is not who our teachers are. Our kids are coming to school to get instruction from a teacher, and they're coming to school and they're not getting that instruction. They're being put on the computer. Well, that has never been our philosophy. We've never, in the time that we've been a school system, had issues with our teachers getting up and teaching. Now, we do know that in the beginning that our teachers learning this program, trying to make sure the kids understand the program, that there is more of that going on right now, trying to make sure everybody is familiar with it so that if we get into a remote situation or if the kids get into a remote situation, that everyone will understand the program and know how to do it. And I'm not saying that we've not had a teacher that has utilized that program more than maybe they should have, as opposed to getting up and engaging the kids. But believe me, we are aware of that. We're having conversations with the teacher. We're trusting our teachers. We're working with our teachers to let them make some decisions about how much of that, and that's something basically they're trying to find that balance. How much am I getting up, reviewing the material? A lot of that's getting worked out along with the doubling of the amount of work with the kids. So this is a fine tuning that we're working through right now. So just know that it's never our expectation and never will be our expectation that kids come to school and the teacher doesn't have to do anything but let the kids get on the computer. I'm not really worried about that. That's certainly not something that we stand for, and our teachers want to be teaching, and that's something that if we have individual situations like that, we can get corrected. Teacher availability for remote learners at the middle and high school level has come up. I'm a remote learner, but how much FaceTime am I getting with the teacher? Or maybe not FaceTime, but just support. Honestly, that is something that we are having to have discussions about. We originally designed the schedule so that the teachers were free on Wednesdays as an opportunity for them to connect and do a lot of that work. What we found is them trying to implement the program, doing all those things that may not be adequate. So we are having conversations. Always going to get the last for us. We are all about energy efficiency in elementary school. So where was I? I was talking about something.
I was taking notes.
Oh, the teacher availability. Thank you, Beverly. Remote learning. That is something that we do see as an issue. We're having conversations. We have a staff meeting tomorrow. Our people are working on that. That's something we've got to fix. And so all I can tell you is we're trying to figure out a way that we can do that. Because we realize that just that Wednesday for the teacher is a hard get. Already assessment and content availability after 2 hours. I think we've handled that pretty well. So I know those are all issues that have come to our attention. Those are things that most of those are, all of those are fixable. I don't think it's, one weekend is certainly not a time to panic. We made a decision to utilize the same courseware that we use in our pathways program throughout, because we again thought that it provided us a consistent approach and the best way to reach all kids, even if the teacher's not there, those kind of things. I've already discussed that. So my focus at this point in time is let's spend our time on making that decision work and keep refining that and keep improving that to get it just right. Now, as members of the board, you are here to represent the community. And so if there is something that I have not addressed related to the curriculum and those kind of things, I have all of my helpers who are a lot smarter than I am about this kind of stuff. I certainly want to make sure that I'm answering any questions that the board members have related to this.
Okay. Yeah.
I may be a while.
Okay, well, let me just mention something there. I made a mistake, but part of my understanding was that the remote teachers would be accessible an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, for students to be able to communicate with them online. And that they would present some of the material, or at least discuss the material, I guess, one day a week. Is that it? Fridays? But I'm wondering if there's not some way where I understand why we're using Edgenuity and we want to have something that's working, whether we're totally remote or we're blended or whatever the case may be. But there's got to be some way where Edgenuity would allow us to have a teacher present some of the material, and for the kids not to then still yet have to go online and duplicate the work that was just done. And to me, that's a concern. And I think that's part of the reason why some of the kids are feeling overwhelmed with the amount of work. And I'd like to understand better self-pacing, because I get the impression from some that, I guess that was longer than I thought I'd be, sorry, that in the self-pacing, some students, I think, are confused or about just how that works. And some are finding themselves not completing the day's work, and yet on the next day they're given another assignment, a full assignment. So if they're behind at all, they're going to stay behind because they don't have a chance to push the pause button to get something done, and they're not going to all work at the same pace. So
All right, let's take that time. So on the office hours, so here's been the dilemma that we faced regarding the contact with teachers. It's two completely different things at the elementary level and the high school level, because elementary teachers are assigned to teach third grade. So that has been a pretty easy fix for us, because we can take all the third graders who are remote, we can assign a third grade teacher to remote kids, and then we can put all the other third graders with the third grade teachers. So that, I don't know that we've had near the issue related to connections from students in the remote world in the elementary level that we've had at the secondary level. At least that's my understanding. The issue, though, when you get into the middle school and the high school that we've run into is just having English, we have a lot of courses, English 9, 10, 11, 12, all the electives in English. So there's not a 10th grade teacher. So it has been much more difficult, which is the reason that we decided that at that level, the classroom teacher, so if you teach English 9 or calculus, if you teach calculus, you teach all the kids calculus, the remote kids, the kids in your classroom. We're at the elementary level, that doesn't happen. You have your kids in the classroom or you're a remote teacher and you have all the remote kids. That's more difficult at the high school level. So that's the reason that we're running into that. Now, I'd have to have some help on the office hours. I think we did encourage our teachers to have office hours and to make contact. I'm gonna need some help. Shannon, can you help me with that? What was that?
Well, we originally, when we thought we were gonna be on a traditional, or the hybrid schedule, we're gonna have remote teachers, and so those remote teachers wouldn't be having other classes, so they'd be able to have those daily office hours, but now they are attached, they have both remote and traditional, and we have to keep them on pace because these are credit-bearing courses. So because of that, you can't really stop instruction. But that was the second question, but we do have,
You want to step up there so other people can, so the people at home can hear you?
we do have, on our bonus period in the morning, our teachers are do having their morning hours, and they are still working during their planning periods to answer questions. So they're available, but they're also teaching classes. So, and hybrid schedules make them both remote and traditional teacher.
So that is something that we're working through, but do you understand the difference that we're facing at the elementary level versus?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, versus the high school level. So that, I think about that, but the office hours goes back to the amount of contact that the remote kids have with the teacher. And so that's what I said to you earlier, that's something that we've got to work on. Now, related to pacing, and y'all, I think I've understood when we talked about pacing and the changes we're making. Can you speak to that?
Yes, we, as Dr. Hipp mentioned, we've been using courseware for the past 2 years, and we've had it assigned in pathways as a full year course. Never had any troubles with our pacing because we assigned it as a full year. Well, now, because we have credit bearing courses and we need to be on a semester point because, we know some students will come back in January. So we have to have semester breaks so that those students can easily go back in. So because of that, when we're setting up the courses, we're looking at a year-long course, and it doesn't have a clear break. It doesn't say this is semester A, this is semester B, because remember, it's aligned on standards. So our teachers had to go through and say, I'm normally teaching this in the first semester, I'm normally teaching this in the second semester. And so we had to break the course in half. Well, Edgenuity isn't designed for a clean break. Some units are longer than others. Some might take you 3 days, some might take you a week and a half, some might take you 10 minutes. And so we explained to our kids, our students, this is a period of adjustment. We're going to have to try to figure out where that pacing is. So after the first 2 days, we listened to our student feedback. We immediately started looking at courses. And the bulk of this has been done at the local school level with Ms. Slade, specialist teachers there, Ms. Melton, Ms. Kilgore, Ms. Thomas, myself, all going through it and really looking at those standards and going through, okay, what's the power standard? What can we take out? What can we teach the second semester? That was a process that went on all last week. Ms. Slade printed me all the courses today that we looked at, basically trying to align the courses a little bit better and taking things out. Not taking out content, but shifting things to second semester to try and have a better baseline. And so we feel very confident that today our students started, and I checked it about right before we came in here, and our students are on pace. There aren't any glaring pacing issues at either our middle or high school, except for students who haven't logged in yet. And so I think what we did worked, but it's a work in progress. And so, we're wanting students to continue to give their teachers feedback so that we can adjust it, because we were listening, we were watching, we were monitoring. We spent this weekend going through as students, taking assessments to see how long it would take us to go through to see if our timing was down. I feel confident about it now.
It makes no sense for us to take our typical, I'm using B student. It makes no sense for us to frustrate our typical B students. We need to make sure that our typical students are putting in similar amount of time that they used to put in to achieve a B that we would now. But we're doing something brand new that we've never done, so it's not going to happen overnight. But I do think that, even before, I began to get emails, we knew that there were issues because teachers were going to the administrator, these kids are behind and whatever. So these were things that I feel pretty comfortable that we can work through these issues. I just don't see that being something that can't be worked through. I feel pretty confident our team's going to be able to do that. Again, we've never had problems before when it was using a remote, where it was really more self-paced by the kid. This year, we're trying to keep everybody along, kind of working along the same, because again, kid could go out for 2 weeks, come back in, teacher could go out, those kinds of things. So we're typically, when we're using this program when you're a remote learner by choice and you're working at self-paced, we allow those kids to move on at their own pace. Now we're trying to kind of keep the class together, and that's, so we're trying to figure out how to manage that. So
Because again, those teachers have aligned that course based on the content. It's a credit, you earn a half a credit for semester 1, half credit for semester 2. So we have to have students being exposed to the same content semester 1, semester 2, in case semester 2 kids come back, they can't duplicate content. So that's one of the reasons why we're trying to keep them on pace as well.
I have a
So-
question. Go ahead, Sharon.
So my question is for the traditional learners, the teachers have their classroom content aligned to Edgenuity software. So why is there this disconnect then between the classroom learning environment and them having to catch up? Why would they need to do two different things?
I don't think they will be honestly. I think that was the first week experience of our teachers spending a lot of time in the classroom, teaching students the product itself, and students not actually doing the product in class. I don't think it'll be an issue. I don't think they'll be doing double the work. They're using that. I think what'll happen is if my Jackson is in a class and the teacher's using it as a framework, he's not going to have to be doing that same work at home at night. They were this last week while we were adjusting the pacing, because we might not have gotten to it.
Sure.
But they'll be working through that during the class period. So I don't think it will be a doubling of a nighttime repetition anymore.
So let's say, for example, we have a student in a traditional classroom and for whatever reason they have to go into quarantine. That transition from going to classroom to getting onto the software is going to be seamless.
Anyone, yes.
And so how would that get graded? How do they get graded?
Graded through Edgenuity. There are some courseware self-grades. There are some things that the teachers grade, but the students will get, as the student is working, they'll see a grade. And that's another thing too. Some of our students, Mr. O'Neill made a good point. They might see that suddenly a grade that they got, it was tied to a pacing grade. Well, we reconfigured our settings. So that was never the true case of, this is my grade. So we reconfigured that so students will only see what their actual average is. So we hope that will help their stress level a little bit. But I forgot where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
a lot of things go off my meter.
No, I know. Doing physics work less like ingenuity. So.
I did have a question about that relates to their grade. While we work through these pacing issues and trying to get everything smoothed out right there, is there going to be consideration to students' grade?
Most definitely. I remember now what I was going to say. One of the things too that we'd like to help with, for example, when we have teachers who are out, as we do, so it should be seamless for the students to continue on. So there can be another teacher come into the room and help monitor that instruction. But yes.
Let me interrupt. So just know, the big concern of mine from the very beginning, I kept asking our team, tell me how, when the chemistry teacher goes out, how are we going to keep teaching chemistry?
Mhm.
There's not any subs out there, y'all, that's going to come in and teach chemistry. Tell me how we're going to do that, because we fully, and we have to plan for the fact that there are going to be rolling absences with teachers. And so that was kind of the big thing, was how we're going to do that. This product does. Now, and we can, even if we adjust how we teach in the classroom, just by having the product, even if we make changes in our classroom, having this product will allow us to fix that issue, so that, God forbid, I have to go to teach calculus or chemistry, whatever. I couldn't do that, but I could get the kids started on the program, manage behavior, make sure everybody's working, doing those kinds of things. So that was a huge part of, we've got to have some kind of framework that we can go to in situations where there are teacher absences.
There's just two other things that I can do this quickly, Angie, I actually can. That come to mind. And to me, it's, as much as possible, it's important for students to be able to interact with teachers. We already interact with so much of our teachers that it's unbelievable. I know a lot of parents and, well, probably even some of us can't truly appreciate just how much the teachers have on them right now. But to me, whatever we do to make it possible for there to be as much interaction between teachers and students, whether they're remote or whether they're traditional, as possible, the better they are. Because I'm one of those people that I did not learn well on a computer. I learned well in a lecture setting where I could raise my hand and ask a question. I got to sit in the front row and make sure they could not ignore me. So, and so there's got to be other kids who can probably be a little bit like that. And so to me, that's very important.
And I will tell you, that is a little more difficult at the high school level than the elementary level. And I go back to the fact of the third grade teacher, we can divide that up. And so, you know, that is our real challenge is, we keep going back to chemistry, because we only have one chemistry course, but when your chemistry course is half, 40% of the kids, we'll use that number because about 40% of our kids have a full remote. How do you manage it when 40% are remote and the other 60% are in class? Well, some people will say, well, the teacher should teach the class and then also make sure that they're given, time for those kids remote. That can be a significant, that's almost like teaching two different classes to that teacher.
I thought Google Classroom can make it possible to do that more.
Google Classroom is something that we talked about. We had the discussion about Google Classroom versus using the consistent approach with Edgenuity and that framework. When we started talking about teacher absences and teachers being out, we lost the ability to do Google Classroom. That is something we still have that, if things we can't get things corrected, I think that's certainly an option. And even as we change things moving forward, we are using Google Classroom, I think, the elementary level.
We're using it at K-12, just in different ways. Elementary level, it's more for assigning content in K2, and at the secondary level, it's more of a communication tool. And I didn't answer Coach Rhodes' question about grades. If you want me to answer that.
Please.
One of the reasons too that we like is Dr. Coco mentioned we like Edgenuity so much was the fact that we can modify grades. So if I'm a student and I'm in 7th grade, my first quiz my teacher gives, it's formative just to see how I'm doing. That I might have 30 on that quiz, but that doesn't mean that 30 is going in the grade book. It's a way for the teacher to see how I'm doing. Well, Edgenuity is set up the same way. So even if a child makes a 30 on the test or quiz and makes a 40 on the next quiz and then might make a 70 on the next quiz, that's part of that formative process that happens in any traditional classroom, except maybe the teachers might not send those grades home. Now parents are seeing those grades. That doesn't mean that grade is sticking in that grade book. So with Edgenuity, our teachers can modify grades. So we can have the discussion, our teachers can have the discussion with the students. They get multiple chances to take a quiz or to do an assignment. And remember, Edgenuity, and that's one of the things our teachers were working with. And they'll probably be working again this week, as we've asked them to teach their students how to take notes if they're doing the assignment, to teach them how to use the accessibility tools as they're doing it. Courseware will read the text to you. You can highlight it, you can highlight certain words that'll give you vocabulary supports. We've asked our teachers, so unfortunately that might happen this week. Your kids still might be working through Edgenuity, but we want them to know everything that product will do. So in the event we do go full remote, they will know how to use it. And so we like that because they can go through and the teachers can modify grades. They can say, okay, I see this class we're struggling. So let me talk a little bit more to you. Let me teach this concept a little better. Let's go deeper. Let's do an alternate lesson. Maybe we'll do something in Google Classroom to help students to modify that grade. So just because we see a grade in there right now, that doesn't mean that grade is the final grade. That's just part of the formative process, whether I'm teaching using a Pearson textbook, or I'm using manipulatives in my classroom, or I'm creating my own work.
So, what I've deduced from this is that the Edgenuity program, would it be accurate to say that it gives us the best shot to have a consistent way to get to the end of the year as smoothly as possible, irregardless of the circumstances that
We
we
think
have?
so. When we had our parent, we were sent out surveys in the spring, and we asked parents, what can we do better? What can we do? And one of the first and foremost is increase the rigor in the assignments. It was consistency among classrooms, because some teachers would do lessons a certain way, some teachers would do lessons another way. And so we wanted to have consistency among the classrooms, and we saw the content that the state was providing. And I think one of the reasons that a lot of districts surrounding us went with another product than the state provided, it didn't match our standards. And so experience with the product, we knew that we had seen a great amount of success. Now, again, we had not divvied it up for semester point before. And so I think we'll continue to see the process. We'll see better results now that we're working through and pacing it a little bit better. But the content, I think, is really good content, and it provides an equitable opportunity for students. So teacher A is teaching this state-aligned, not just state-aligned, but nationally aligned content. And so this teacher is teaching with this content, another teacher is teaching with this content, and the same teacher is teaching with this. So regardless of who I have, and regardless if I'm in or out of the building, regardless if my teacher is out, I still have access to quality content on a consistent basis. Instead of I'm absent, I have a sub for 2 weeks, and I'm doing worksheets because it's a non-certified person, and they're just passing out work. I have actual content that continues on.
I have another question. On the point of more teacher interaction, is there any way that, or has it been a discussion, implementing videos that could be put into the coursework, so that if a teacher is out to be quarantined, or just absent for an extended period of time, that consistency can continue from that teacher?
Well, first, yes, a teacher can certainly do that through Google Classroom. But the way courseware is set up is it follows best practices. It has a beginning activity that's a hook. It has a video. It has vocabulary supports. It has a game. It has an assignment. So it follows a certain pathway all the way through. So they're embedded videos in that. But yes, it's certainly just like our elementary teachers are doing right now, videoing every week and putting a video up, and that can certainly be happening.
But this speaks to the core of Bob's question as well. And so we have to understand that this program is designed to be a remote, individualized, that a kid can get on and work through. I mean, it has the videos, it has all those things. So our challenge is, how do our teachers supplement that and bring that human touch to the classroom? But now listen, nothing is as good as going to the classroom and working with the teacher and those kinds of things. So we are using a product that's designed so that, just like if you chose to be, in our Pathways program, we have kids in Pathways. Prior to this year, now everybody can be remote. We've had kids in our Pathways program whose schools just wasn't a good fit for them, or there were other issues. I think we had an Olympic athlete that traveled the world that got on our Pathways program. And it truly is designed that a kid could work through it. It has all the tutorials and the videos, and it's designed that way, that a kid could be successful. So we think that brings value. Now, the thing we've got to be careful about is, okay, are they coming to Mr. Cofield's class and I'm saying, y'all get on Edgenuity, I'm gonna get back and, that's the thing we've got to be careful. We've got to figure out a way where we're coupling this teacher interaction and teacher involvement in the classroom, not requiring additional work. That's the thing we're working through right now.
Would it be possible, and or would there be any merit to just videotape classes? In other words, I see a lot of heads going negative.
Well, so videotaping courses is something that we, at the sometimes I'm asked about that. Why can't we just put a camera in the classroom when the teacher's teaching? There are huge issues related to that concept. First of all, what if a student has, social emotional issues inside the classroom? What if there are discipline issues inside the classroom? I would hate to know in the world that we live in, I'm just going to be very honest, with social media and those things, that our teachers are going to be put out there for everything that's said or done in the classroom to be taken out of context and whatever. These are people who are busting their tail, making $45,000 to $55,000 a year. Put them out there in the world every day, be criticized or whatever. I just don't trust that process. I'm not ready to go there yet. I think that would be extremely unfair to our teachers.
I'm not proposing at all to put them on the spot or a pub, I'm not proposing anything, I'm just asking, or a public video that goes on Facebook and like that. I just wondered, I mean, if there would be any way to do a very clean,
No, that's a good question.
presentation that would give this student that is using Edgenuity, but really needs to have some kind of contact with their instructor, just some kind of a video way to contact with.
And we do that some at the elementary level. So you're talking about individual
Yeah,
lessons.
no, I'm not talking about somebody
Or
just,
students are remote at the elementary level.
That-
That is beginning to happen. We purchased another product called Screencastify, and we have a lot of teachers that are beginning to put up videos, shortened videos, that are going back over that content again. So we are beginning to do that at the high school level.
I mean, this may be still an example, but it just came to mind. I mean, 2 days a week, I'm coaching linebackers in Salzburg, Austria by WhatsApp. And it's not perfect, but there is some teacher pupil contact. And I mean, the problems are pretty simple. I mean, sure, we can have all teacher contact we want to. We're not gonna have any teachers, we're gonna work them to death. I mean, they're already
And what they do with it.
tough jobs just trying to prepare and handle all this stuff.
And again, we resolve that pretty easily at the elementary level. Now, there may be some options. We got a meeting tomorrow. We'll bring everybody, we're looking at, are there ways to collapse certain courses so that we free certain teachers up? All those kind of things are things that we're going to be looking at to try to free teachers up so that we get that, build that teacher interaction. But it's easy to say, and then you look at that math schedule and these kids are taking chemistry and and so free teachers up to do that, but that is our goal. And again, one of the first things I said to you when we were talking about the teacher interaction, I'll admit to you, that's, the Wednesday free day and the office hours is not, we're not seeing that that's going to work as successfully as we thought. So they're looking at it, we're brainstorming, we're going to look at, can we combine some courses, those kinds of things.
I mean,
There may be possibilities out there to do that. And there's always options. We just haven't, they are all thinking about them. And I'm sure they're going to come to me tomorrow with some really great ideas or whatever. They're going to say, this is what we got to have this or that.
and I'm certainly not trying to muddy the water now, because I know that, I mean, basically what you're trying to be, you're trying to be all things for all people in all situations, and that's an all-day sucker, okay, and that's pretty hard to do. Just some of these children that just need some contact with their instructor, there'd be a way to do it. I think it could be helpful. That's all I'm saying.
I might muddy the waters just a little bit, but first I want to just preface that by saying I see the effort. It's huge. It's appreciated. I know you're going to make the system right. My issue is, as a parent who consciously chose traditional, my expectation for my student was remote would have the online system, traditional would be in a traditional classroom setting. And when we ended up going staggered, I thought, okay, it's 4 weeks. We're going to see what the virus does. We're going to introduce our traditional students to the platform in case we all go virtual. But then in 4 weeks, we're back to traditional. And what I feel like I'm hearing is for the year, traditional, remote, blended are all on Ingenuity for the or courseware for the year for their curriculum. And I have an issue with that because I feel like we're going to worst case scenario of this virus from the get-go.
And we're not there yet. I think that first of all, had we not been told on August the 4th that 6 foot is an issue, we only went to, the staggered schedule when we were told that, and that's the same time that we made the decision to go to Edgenuity. When we thought we were going to go to school and just the remote kids were staying, they were working on how to make Google, help me with the words.
We were going to use Google Classroom.
We were going to use Google Classroom. So that was our plan after that. They were working 100 miles an hour. They were putting all that together. So when they made that decision, that's when all that changed. I do think that introducing that to all the kids will help us going forward no matter what. But I think that decisions that we make as a board related to where are we going next will then guide our thinking and our processes related to what is that going to look like as far as classroom instruction. So, here's our situation. Let's have a plan. Let's work the plan. Well, that's where we are right now. Once we as a board decide, okay, and at this point in time, there's the possibility we're going to change plans. Shannon was in my office today and I said, okay, I need you to start thinking if on this date we do something different, how is that going to impact what we do instructionally? So that decision has not, and we're not set on this for the rest of the year. So know that.
But it does seem to me that in the situation that we're in, the first thing that we had to do was to deal with worst case scenario and to have a way to keep the shop open, finish. I mean, it looks to me like if we would have approached this from, we're gonna traditional school, everything will be just like it's always been. And then we'll adjust off that if we need be. But that could have been
And I'm in agreement with that.
There is a possibility that if we go to something else and we change because we've had our growing pains in this short, that it will help us on the other end. If that, who knows what's coming next. But I do want, there's been no decision to do anything we're working.
So to clarify, when the 4 weeks or whenever we decide to go back to traditional remote blended, not staggered, are you saying traditional will continue to use courseware or no?
I'm saying we haven't made that decision yet. We've got to see what it looks like with our teachers. We could go back 5 days and we can still have teachers who are quarantined out. So we know that we will probably, at some point during the school year, I would imagine that we will have students or teachers who are out on quarantine. I cannot imagine that will miraculously happen overnight. And so because of that, we will still have the option that we can use courseware. I don't think there's a teacher, there's a staff member who this is ideal. This is the COVID response. We all want teachers in there teaching children. That's what we want to do. But so as Dr. Pickle said, we don't know what school will look like. And for right now, we're trying to have the best response to be consistent for all students and provide them all the same and equitable education.
See, it seems to me that that's an extremely important point because we have no idea. I mean, we have no idea what's going to happen as we progress into different levels. I mean, let's say 4 weeks from now or 3 from now, whenever we decide, hey, the numbers are great, everything's flattened out, and we're going conventional school. Does that guarantee that things are going to stay just as they are? Absolutely not. We have no idea what's going to happen. All we know is is that this blended approach that we have done has worked for that. When you start developing the students, I mean, it could go as smooth as silk, or we could have rolling absences that I believe would make us very thankful that we had something in place that would at least keep us moving ahead academically. As cumbersome as it is, and it is very cumbersome.
We also don't know how things will go with flu season.
Absolutely. I mean,
Please know,
most of them unknowns.
this was not pushed down from the central office level. I mean, the high school met with their leadership team. You know, they're the ones that came back to us at the central office level and said, the teachers who are involved in that, try to get buy-in in everything that we're doing, really feel like this is the best approach. There was never anything that came down from the central office and said, y'all are going to do it this way. We listened to our teachers. Now, does that mean every teacher thought that was the best? No. We got 60 teachers that, we always try to make sure that our teachers have a voice in that, those kind of things. And those conversations will be continuing, first now to improve what we're doing. Second, if we begin to make other decisions about what the future looks like, they'll be involved with that as well. If the teachers feel good about it, then there's a lot higher chance of success than there is if the teachers don't feel good about it. But we need them to buy in, whatever. So maybe that needed to be said, maybe it didn't. I want you to know that. So, any other questions about that before we go about where we're going now, which is a more difficult conversation? Have we answered all the questions or things? Okay, so let's get to the probably the more difficult conversation. That is, where are we going? And so, you have been provided. Y'all know that we keep comprehensive data in our schools about kids and staff members, who's been exposed, who's under quarantine, who's COVID, all, and we track that information. I provide you a summary. Of course, it's like this has happened a lot. This is the second time that we've gone 2 Fridays. I do provide you a summary of data. I do think that it's very important that we are looking at data and that we're data driven. Although there's certainly a lot of unknowns, but for me, I'm sure y'all get emails too, and I get emails every day, and they are all different. Some people say we need the kids back in school. Some people say, please do not change anything, stay the course, whatever. Some people say, no matter what you do, just do the same thing for the elementary as you do high school. So this is, I've been doing this a long time, and there's probably been 10 cases in my career where there's probably not a right or wrong answer. We have to make some decisions. So you have been given data about just where we currently sit at the end of week 1. That right now, when I take a snapshot in time on a Friday afternoon, I go in, I look at the data, I extract that data out at that moment in time. Of course, by that next Monday, some people may have come off of quarantine. So it's just a one shot in time when we pull that information. And that right now our data looks pretty good. Of course, the question is, well, have we been in school long enough to really make a difference? Well, that's a fair question. All we can do is report out the data. But you have been given the data. You know that right now less than 1% of our students have been quarantined or other. Julie would have to, our lead nurse is here to answer any of your questions when I mess them up about what's the difference in a quarantine and an isolation and exposure, because it gets very, but right now less than 1% of our students are quarantined. Even less number who are actually COVID positive. Our staff numbers about 1.5%. And so when you combine all of our students and staff who are in a building, we're currently right now at about 1%. just being absent on Friday because of quarantine or whatever. Those that are positive COVID, less than that. So we get into this question, and let's just put it out there. I know that by the time we all go home on the news, there's going to be other school systems that's going to be announcing plans to go back to 5-day schedules. I think we're going to see that some are going to be going back as early as September the 14th. Some of those systems have been in school longer than we have. Some will be announced September the 21st. I didn't come here tonight to even make an announcement. I came here tonight so that we can have open conversation about this, because we've not made a decision yet as a board. But I'm comfortable having this conversation. So that's where our numbers are currently. I do think that this is Scott's opinion, and I think as board members who represent the community, I do, I think it is, because you do represent the public. I want us to have a conversation about that. And just because I say I think this is what we want to do, I certainly respect the opinion of the board. And I think if we find consensus, and it may not be tonight, y'all may want to take the information, the conversation amongst each other, and you may want to go home and think about it. And it'd be great if we can gain consensus, but I think this is maybe one of those decisions where I've had with other boards where everybody likes everybody, but maybe we're on, maybe we don't all agree on what this thing should look like. And I get that happens. But some things for consideration. Then let's open it up and let's get your thoughts, and you can ask me questions. And Julie's here if we want to get a report on. Tell me what it looks like in the school. What are you seeing? What are our concerns? This is just what's in my head. But what's in my head is if we can keep our absences less than 5%, if we can monitor that for a certain period of time, then if we stay at below 5%, I think we should consider going back to school. Now, I do think that parents will need some notification in advance, a week, once we make that decision. But I do think that if our absenteeism due to quarantines and those things stay less than 5%, I think that's a pretty good number. Now, is the department, I have asked people in places in Department of Public Health to give us a number. I've asked people in the State Department of Education to give us a number. Nobody's going to give us a number. I just hate to make decisions without having some type of benchmark or some type of trigger. I feel like we need to have that. I don't want to be making emotional decisions on saw this happen. I think that we ought to be driven by some type of data. So that's what's in my head. Is we can stay below 5%. I think that we need to consider going back to school. Now, once we come back to school, which is another discussion, what is that number where if we rise to a certain percentage where this ain't working, we need to go back to stagger. In my head, that's somewhere between 10 to 15%. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but that's just the number of absences related to quarantines and that. We'll certainly be tracking the COVID numbers, and I don't want to say it's got to be 10 or you know what? I think that you have to look at absences, but then you also look at COVID positive cases. And I think there's got to be some discretion where we can certainly work with Julie and contact public health officials to get some guidance related to that. That is my thought process. Now, so we can talk about those numbers. If you're comfortable with that, then the next thing we got to talk about, how long do we stay and stagger and look at those numbers before we decide, okay, we've been in school long enough, we've got the data, let's move on out, or how long. So let's talk about how comfortable you are with that number, utilizing 5%, and let's talk about how comfortable you are as the amount of time that you would like to see us stay in staggered before we were to come out of that.
Well, the numbers that I would want to see personally I got no problem with 5%, as a starting point, but I don't know what that 5% tells us, other than if it stays below 5%, that means the blended approach has worked. It doesn't tell us anything about what would happen when we all come back together. So the numbers that I would want to see personally is systems that have had a similar benchmark when they came back to full-time school, when they had everybody back on campus. What happened to the numbers then? And if the numbers, if the numbers tell us that it's been relatively the same, and relative is a very broad term, I know, well, then I think that'd be a good move. But if there is consistent evidence that by doing this, the numbers shoot sky high and could lead to having to go back to blended, or having everyone going remote, or kids being home all year, then I would be very, very concerned about that. I mean, I think whatever decision that we make, I really hate to say this, but I'm gonna, we gotta be right. To me, the worst thing that can happen to us is for us to bounce back and forth. That, because I do believe very strongly right now that if those numbers hold right there, the firm thing that it is telling us is that the way we're going to school now, as imperfect as it is, works to a large extent. Our kids are in school, not as much as we'd like it to be. Our parents do have a quote normal, that's really not the right word, but it is a consistent schedule that they can work on. It's not a very good one, but it's a heck of a lot better than if we had rolling absences and, well, I'm sorry, but the science class is going to have to be taught from home, and you're going to have to get childcare. Well, when does it start? Well, it starts tomorrow. That's a nightmare scenario for a parent. And I think that's what we have to be able to avoid. As it is now, we are having extracurricular events, and we are having some sort of a rhythm in school that we can build on. And I'm not saying this is necessarily wrong, but I sure like to go to school on what these numbers have shown other systems, and maybe Julie can tell us. I think it's too early in the year to tell really what schools have done.
Well, there is no, that's phone calls and questions. There is no database that exists out there that we can go and pull up. Some of the schools, and of course in Jefferson County, you have a lot of the schools that are full remote and they're not coming back. You do have some of the schools who are full-time at the elementary level already. They started the year that way, and then they're staggered at the high school. We can call and ask those questions, but it's just are you going to give us good information, and what are your numbers?
No, I know at this point in time, in our country, there probably aren't systems that we can go to school on, but maybe in 2 to 3 weeks or 10 days there will be. I'm not being critical of the decisions that systems around us have made in order to make that decision, but I think we should go to school on what happens in those systems. If it's smooth sailing for them, well, then I would be myself much more confident.
Yeah, we can certainly learn from them. And obviously it's going to take a couple of weeks of data to make any kind of knowledgeable decision, but one full weekend, what percentage of absences are we at due to COVID currently?
I was just looking at that sheet. That's way less than 1% due to just COVID positive.
0.22%.
Yeah.
And that's
So,
positive, that's
Positive.
I don't know if that's including
1.04.
exposure. I don't know how you did the data, but
Yeah.
yeah. We haven't had a lot of positive cases. What we've had a lot of is people having to quarantine because maybe a family member is positive, not even people related from school, but somebody in their family's positive, or they were around somebody at the lake and found out they were positive, so now they got to quarantine. It really wasn't instances where they were exposed through school. And we've been able to do that because we can maintain a 6-foot difference. When that goes away, our control over those exposures, or even what the health department considers exposures, is going to go away. That's just the way it is. The cases will go up for sure. It's not even a question about that. But,
It will be the contact tracing numbers that will be huge.
right,
And that does concern me. And it also concerns me with teachers being more susceptible to the virus and the ability to get subs. And I have a question about subs because this morning we talked about having dedicated subs for our system. Did you say it's one in each school?
Yes, right
But
now.
we can still get subs through the normal channels.
Yes, now, in the first week or two, we've encouraged them, actually, Ms. Holdsworth is looking at that for me. The thing is, I don't want a different sub in the building all the
Right.
time, because the more we limit the number of outside people that's coming into
Right.
our schools, the better off we are. So we have provided them a full-time sub in every school. We're evaluating that, and we've also asked them, to develop what we call triage teams, so that, if me and you and coach are on the same team and coach is out, that one of us can cover. So
Like Plan B.
Sort of, yes. But we hope we get to that point that, no, that's kind of for, you're out for 2 weeks kind of a thing. If the numbers stay low, we're comfortable with, okay, a teacher's got to be out because we got to go to a doctor's visit and we just got to go get our normal regular sub, then we're certainly going to allow that. But in the very beginning, we wanted to look at our numbers before we started doing that. I'm also open to, again, we got to look at our numbers. If we need to add more than just one permanent sub, we can do that too.
I would say that at this point, that the numbers that you have given for us are good. I mean, I think those are good benches to work with. And I think that we just need to try to get as much information as we can, to get as educated as we can, to see what's happening around us. But I mean, I think it's too soon to make a decision myself.
I'm in agreement.
My opinion.
I think the numbers are good. I don't think we need to make a plan tonight and make a decision. I would be interested in knowing what Shelby County is going to do as far as their curriculum now that they're going back to school. Are their traditional kids still going to do the online platform? And definitely, or not? I would like to know that.
Well, if they're traditional, they'll be coming back to school.
But will they be doing? Are they doing courseware, or do we know?
I think they're probably using the state product. There's,
They're using
we,
both.
do I,
Both?
They're using both.
Shelby County is, okay.
So do you know, with their kids coming back on the 14th, will they be required to continue their online?
But I mean, that was a week ago discussion.
Yeah. Thank you.
If we were to reach out to people and get y'all that information, are y'all, if we tried to make a decision by, what is today, the 31st? If we got you information from other schools that have been open, I don't know if anybody's been open at the middle school and the high school level.
No.
The only ones that I know of are, and there are some, I know of one district way down south, but I think I'm not sure how they're interpreting certain things, so I'm not going to go there. But if we get you that information at the end of the week, I was really looking at the end of next week, if we could see our numbers, how quickly could we possibly get back? And in my head, I was thinking around September. Y'all know me, and I don't know if y'all agree with this, but I was also thinking elementary around September 14th, and looking at 2 weeks, and then possibly middle school and high school 2 weeks later around the 28th. That's what's in my head. I feel very confident at the elementary school level, because kids stay in classrooms, that even though if we come back, even though if we're not 6 feet apart, we still have a lot more control. Middle school and high school, kids are changing classes, kids are bigger, kids have more freedom when they're changing classes. In elementary, we line them up and we all go in the line to cafeteria. The high school, fourth period bell rings and you're supposed to go to the cafeteria, so I can decide to stop to Sharon if I want to, and talk to you, and I have a lot more freedom. So even though they've got one place here and there, and obviously they're very organized, so that is what's in my head. And there's a lot of people who do not agree with doing that. They do not agree with elementary and then secondary later. A lot of people say, if you're gonna do it at the same time. It's just that, to me, the elementary level, we can see if we're successful there. I have much bigger concerns about a possible spike to middle school and high school level.
And I'm in agreement with that plan. Something I brought up the other day and want to just bring up in this platform is another option to consider, which is when we do decide to open, go back 4 days with Wednesday still virtual for an opportunity to clean, sanitize, regroup. And I've talked to my microbiology specialist friend that says that's the middle day. It's not really necessary because the virus doesn't have a very long surface life. But I think it would give us a chance to clean and sanitize and regroup, and maybe a stepping stone.
Any more comments from the board? All I'm really hearing is you want me to go out and find out what some of these other people who have already opened up, what their numbers are looking like.
Yes.
I know that eventually, when, I think, what Coach said, when we come back, well, I don't necessarily want to base all our decisions upon what somebody else has done. When we do come back, we want it to work. Because we've got a lot of families out there whose financial situation is dire because they're not able to work because their kids aren't in school. And, you know, they probably need or want us to make this decision today. But when we do make the decision, we want to have the possibility of working as can be to hopefully give them a little bit more stability. So I don't know if I'm expressing that correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all aware of that. I mean, there's people on this board that are experiencing that. I mean, it's certainly a very important component, but it's not the only one. There are other things that have to be considered as well.
Okay, here's what I'm hearing. I'll be calling tomorrow. I'll be calling Homewood, and we'll be calling Trustful, and we'll be calling some people that I know who have been in school with their elementary kids. We'll check their high school, middle school as well. They're doing the same thing at that level that we are. They're doing staggered. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if anybody in this area whose high school is going full time. We'll check and see what their numbers are. And I'll get that information to you as soon as possible. And you know, please be thinking. I would like, you know, not that I'm trying to be overly aggressive or whatever, but if we can make a decision sooner rather than later and give our, you know, families a week or so, you know, to me, if we could elementary September 14th, possibly our secondary schools 2 weeks later, I'm not set on that. I'm certainly, you know, again, you represent the community. If they're, you know, if that makes you feel uncomfortable, other things, we certainly can have conversations about it. So, all right, we will move on from that. Julie is here. Do you have any questions about how these processes are working in the schools, or any issues related to the decisions about quarantining or exposure or any of that kind of stuff?
What do you think is working best at the school for prevention?
Well, if you read in this toolkit, that the health department gives us certain things: social distancing, you know, hand washing, disinfecting, masking, those kind of things. But when you go to contact trace people, the health department's main concern is 6 foot distance. So just like when you drive a car, you put a seatbelt on, you don't drink and drive, you do all these things to make it safer, which we're doing. We're doing all the things we can to make it safer. Ultimately, the health department, when you go to contact trace, which we're not, you know, we're not contact trace, but when we do the investigation on who's been in close contact with someone, if that 6 foot rule is not maintained, they're automatically considered a close contact, regardless of if they have a mask on, if they have a face shield and a mask on, if they wash their hands 15 times during the day. That doesn't matter. The only thing that matters as far as our investigation is if they were within 6 feet. And that's why it's so difficult to maintain it's gonna be difficult to maintain the low numbers when, if we go back full, just because you've got more people, there's more people on the buses, there's more people in the cafeterias, there's more people changing, middle school and high school. They make it difficult for us to be in a situation where we can't maintain the 6 feet. And they have made it a little bit easier. They used to say with any symptom, we had to contact trace and send the kids home right away. Now it's only with one of the 3 major symptoms. So they've broken the symptoms into major, which is a new cough, loss of sense, the taste or smell, or difficulty breathing or shortness of breath. Those are the 3 main. If we have kids with those symptoms, so if they come in the health group and they're coughing, we have to immediately contact trace who's around them at that time and send all those students home. If it's just 2 of the minor symptoms, then we can send that student home. They can follow up with their medical provider. If they test positive, then we have to go back and grab those close contacts of that student and send them home also. But if that student goes home and the doctor gives them a different diagnosis, maybe they have strep throat or flu or whatever, then we don't necessarily have to grab those people and take them, with that person. But regardless of the exposures, which are out for the most amount of time, that's 14 days, it doesn't matter if say you and I'm exposed to you, you're exposed to me, and I say, well, I'm gonna go get a test, and if it's negative, then I can come back. That is not the case. If you're out for a 14-day quarantine, you cannot test your way out of it. You cannot get a doctor's note to return. If you're out for a 14-day quarantine because you were exposed or are identified as a close contact, you're out for 14 days. There's no way to get back in.
Okay.
So it's difficult. I mean, it's a difficult thing to follow in a setting, in an institution like a school.
Isn't that the issue?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, when you lose 6 foot distance,
Right.
that becomes a major
That's
factor. I don't know about anybody else, but I couldn't even follow an explanation as to what was a minor, what was a major, when you're out, when you're in.
Well, look, we've been doing this for 6
No, I
months.
Well,
So I pretty much am like, preschool on COVID, but,
what's easier about the elementary level is kids are only in one class. So when we have the exposure, we just have to go to that one class. If it's in high school, they're in 7 different periods, and now one exposure multiplies and has the potential, whatever. And they're finally our kids are back and they're at least participating in things and stuff, and I see kids smiling and doing things that they enjoy doing. There is the potential that if you return too quick, you break the 6 feet, now all of a sudden the one exposure multiplies, and now we've got 24 kids that got to go home, and next thing you know, the volleyball team can't play, or the cheer, or the track team, or the football, or whatever. And I know that may not be important to some people, but all of a sudden, if we're not careful, or even we have to shut down certain classes, so there's a bigger potential for the thing to mushroom.
right.
The middle school and high school level. But at some point, the virus is here. We've got to deal with the virus. At some point, we got to get back to life too. So,
Yeah.
So that's why it's important just to kind of test and see. Some people are venturing out. Let's see what happens.
Learn from other people's mistakes if that's the way it happens. If Shelby County goes back and we see a little data that they've got a big spike, then we're money ahead if we haven't jumped and done the same thing just to play follow the leader.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
But that data is gonna take at least 2 to 3 weeks to gather, because, the incubation period is up to 14 days, so you really wouldn't have accurate data probably until that 3rd week, 2nd and 3rd week.
Yeah, but if you get any of those 3 major signs and you start sending kids home quarantined because of that, we will know that earlier than
Right.
an actual COVID test in many cases.
And there's also, we just learn from having phone conversations. with folks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that.
Yes.
All right, with the board's permission, I'm going to deviate just a little bit from our normal protocol and move at least partially to recognition of those that may want to address the board. I think it would be help us the most if people that came and wanted to address the board could do so while we're in this topic rather than going back to it later on. And normally we do ask you to keep your comments to 5 minutes if you can, please. And normally we ask just for comments, it's not a question and answer, but we do have a lot of experts here tonight from our school system. So if you do have questions, why this would be a good time to ask. I think it's okay to do that. Carl might break every rule. Oh, you're Robert's Rules of Order. Says Robert's Rules of Order or other similar. Okay, all right. You're doing fine. Okay, so if you do wish to address the board, or if you do have questions, the iPad set up right here to my left on that stand is the microphone. If you would please come forward to that and just state your name and then make any comments that you have to make.
All right, I'll do
So my name is Janelle Taylor. And first, let me say, I understand that you're making decisions between bad and worse. And I know that our teachers and our principals and all of the team supporting Dr. Cofield are doing the best that they can. But several times today, we heard comments about teacher comfort and convenience and doing the best for them. And I want to make sure we're keeping the students' educational needs at the forefront as well. There have been a lot of concerns about Edgenuity. And Dr. Cofield, I know you mentioned we have time to get it right, but if we stay out an extended period of time, progress reports will be out before we know it, and our kids could fall behind. I know in contact tracing, you mentioned the 6-foot proximity. A question that you may not be able to answer is, are you taking into account the 15-minute duration? Okay.
And it's cumulative.
I do, I understand. One thing too, you've talked about what are those triggers to return and what are those triggers to retreat. I would encourage the board to also look at your typical absentee rate during cold and flu season. 5% and 10% may be too high, could be too low. Look at what's happening when the cold and flu season hits as well. And let's factor that into the decision. And then a question you may not be able to answer, in those exposure cases, are they students or teachers?
The board has that information, but I wouldn't be comfortable providing that. But our board does, we do have that. We are tracking both students and staff members.
Okay. And that was it. Super simple. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm not worried about, this is gonna sound bad, I'm not worried about the progress reports, because I think we've got, again, if we've had a kid who's typically been a B student, then we gotta make sure that the program that we're using is not forcing them to get, your kid's been getting a B their whole life. If all of a sudden now, because we're doing something different, your kid's coming on with a D or an F. Why would we create ourselves that kind of problem for our kid? So we're going to make sure we adjust that accordingly. Now gotta be careful, because if you tell kids don't worry about it, you're going, kids will, sometimes not want to maybe do the work, but our kids are great. So I think that we'll be fine there. We're going to work on that to make sure that's not an issue.
My name's Donna Taylor. I have a 4th grader and an 8th grader. I also have a friend who is at a volleyball game, and so I promised her I would also ask her questions as well. Is there a way to get a tutorial for the parents on Edgenuity? How do we know that the kids are behind? I mean, my daughter was afraid to tell me because she didn't want to get in trouble. So how do I know that? How do I keep up with it? And how do I know what the expectation should be? And how does it work? And these are all the things that as a parent, I'm struggling with. Even, my 4th grader's stuff. I mean, he's, I have to work at home. So he's off doing his thing and then he disappears. I said, well, did you do it? Yep. Okay. So how do I know? How do I know he did it right? Is there progress reports that we as parents can get? And those are a lot of the concerns that we have.
Okay, I heard lots of conversation today in our group about tutorials for parents. Somebody will step up and, Marla, our instructional technology integration specialist, if you'll give us a little feedback on that, please.
At the beginning of all of this, we kind of worked on a parent website that we're currently still working on and updating. I know we are learning the program too. It is very much a learning curve for all of us. And I'm spending time daily with that. Our remote teachers, especially for the 3-5 platform, the Odyssey program, which is through Edgenuity. The remote teachers are becoming more the expert in that. And I'm actually working this week with the traditional 3-5 teachers. We're currently utilizing that platform within the traditional students for social studies and science content. Currently, we're really trying to focus. We know that reading and math gap is what we need to make sure is there. We can't do all the science and social studies if we can't read. So this is coming into supplement so that there's, again, like a high school, there's consistency across the board with what instruction is happening. Yes, you're going to work on having some videos. I currently have remote teachers, like I said, who are becoming more and more the expert in being in this platform and the program, and so they've worked on and are creating screencasts that I know they are sending and are sharing with other traditional teachers across their building, so that we have our own kind of repository of informational videos, so that we have your teachers that are in the building with your students that are being able to then put that information out to you guys. We're still updating the parent site. I've now gone from 1 page of Edgenuity to now there's 3 pages. So I'm trying to make sure there's a student access site, a parent access site, and then videos that you will have the access to those same screencasts. We're also having daily conversations with teachers to ensure that whatever they're sending to the students, send those to you through your email, not just to Google Classroom, but to send it to you as well, so that you are able to then go in and look at that. As far as progress reports, we've done a lot of updates with the courseware side for the secondary. We did have the parent portal activated. Once all of your information is pulled into that, we have to do a one-time upload to pull all of the parent information, contact information from our student information system into the Edgenuity courseware platform. Once that updates and it sends out, it will send you a confirmation email. And I know we're handling, I think, 2 separate ways. The middle school, once you receive that email, you will contact your child's 4th period teacher. There's a specific activation code that is specific to each student that they have to give you. And it's not something that we can run a massive batch report to get. They have to know who's your student. They have to go in and pull that student information and then send that to you. At the high school, correct me, how we're taking care of that?
So far, we've had people contacting the counselors, and then they funneled that to me, and I've gotten this goes out.
Okay, so again, there's not a way for us to pull a massive batch report because it's our specific, and Edgenuity doesn't want us to, they don't want to cross into all of the information to make sure that you are the parent, that you are getting your child's code that will then add you just for the information you get for them. So for courseware, middle school and high school, if you have a student who is taking a Edgenuity course, you will get a weekly progress report emailed to you through the product that will give you an updated course kind of information, what you need, progress, and the average for the assignments that they have completed. But then you also have the ability to log into more of a real-time progress to be able to see, if you log into the portal, that you can see kind of what was their time on task and how, you know, how much time have they spent on a certain lesson, or, oh, I think you're stuck on something, that you can see that. Odyssey works a similar way, where we're pulling in information for those students. Teachers are actually having to go in, they have to manually add the parent email address, but once you get in there, you have access to some kind of parent portal scenario where you have access to go in and look real time at your students' progress and what they're working on. So that is going to be available. Again, we've only been in 7 days, so give us a minute. We are working through a lot of things is to make sure that we have plans in place for each building, like who do parents should be guided to get those access codes? How do we have to make sure that all the parent information is there? Is it manually, or is it something we can do a one-time upload for? So we figured all that out last week, and we're going to be working to make sure that all that goes out.
All right, so Marla, I hate this to be a staff meeting, but I heard the PD, I heard a lot of grades 3 through 5 or whatever. Are we ahead in certain grade levels related to tutorials for parents and behind right now in other areas?
Not necessarily behind. What we found is in going through and gathering information that would be helpful to parents, a lot of the information that's provided by the software platforms we're utilizing are very long and lengthy. So like the parent guide, I'll use Odyssey as an example because I was looking at it earlier today for the what we're utilizing for 335. Their parent guide is 22 pages long. I'm not going to upload that to the website because that serves you no good for you to have to go in and look at a 22-page document. So what we're trying to do is break that down into smaller chunks, that it's an easier platform for parents to be able to have access to, help documents, making sure that we can get things translated and have it available in 2 languages, but also that videos, a lot of our teachers have taken on, those remote teachers, because they don't have face-to-face in a traditional setting with their students. They knew they had to provide a way for those students to know how to access certain things. And so they have taken on themselves to make screencasts using the platform that Ms. Slade brought up earlier. Screencasts are being utilized in all of our buildings right now. But that's a great way for teachers to record and kind of give tutorials to students by whatever platform they're working on, Google Classroom, Courseware, Odysseyware, whatever it is, that they can have their voice attached to it. And it's not just another video from another software platform. It is the teacher actually talking them through that.
I think the best way too, if teachers have specific questions about things, to contact the teacher. And then a lot of times teachers in turn have been reaching out to us and saying, hey, we have parents to ask about this, can you do a screen testify about it, or a video, or can you do a tutorial or an FAQ about it? And so we just need to know what the questions are so we can address them. Like just contact the platform teacher and then they contact us.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Okay, I'm Rachel Hill, and Angie hit most of my high points with my questions today. My concerns are that, and I know the teachers are overwhelmed, but they are not teaching when they're in the classroom. My child is on that computer from the minute he walks in that school till he comes home. And then it's back on that computer again. And we chose traditional to have a teacher teach my kid, not Edgenuity. That is one of my biggest concerns. My also big concern is not getting back to teachers teaching our kids when they go back full time. And I know you said you did not have an answer to that question, but it really needs to be addressed. We chose traditional to have a teacher teach. If I wanted Edgenuity to teach my kid, I would have chosen remote. Those are my biggest concerns. And also a little communication, a lot of stuff could have been avoided with teachers saying, hey, this pacing really doesn't mean anything. They're not late, they're not failing. Nothing's really due till December. I got an email about that, and it was like my child, the weight was lifted off my child's shoulders because he was locked out of Edgenuity, wouldn't let him progress. He had 11 assignments that were late. It was Friday afternoon. I had no way to get in touch with anybody. I had to spend the entire weekend with a very stressed kid trying to work, finish schoolwork. Communication is huge, and I know they're overwhelmed. But that simple thing saying, hey, this pacing doesn't mean anything, and I know you took it out today. I know it's gone, so they don't see it. But that is huge communication between parents. Teachers should have told the kids first day, don't worry about that.
these are what you need to do, not these 12 assignments that it's going to take you 20 hours to do.
Well, I don't think the teachers knew that the first day. I think that's
Well,
the
and
pro-
that's a problem too.
Well,
But I mean, I understand that it's a new program, but you've used it for a couple of years in a different capacity because it's a credit recovery program, not a teaching program. But at any rate, that's been addressed, and I appreciate that. The pacing and the whole panic over I have 11 lessons due in 6 hours.
Recovery program, we use it as a credit recovery program for some students, but it is an acceleration program, an additional credit program that we use for English learners and use for special populations. It's a multi-use program.
Okay. But those are my only concerns. It's
Thank you.
Good evening. I'll start by saying my name is Ramona Sewell. I have a 3rd and 4th grader at Pelham Oaks. I'll also start off by saying thank you for an opportunity to speak, and thank you for all of the background work that you guys have been doing, whether in this platform or through the school board or social media or whatnot. I'm standing before the board, and I'm here because I have grave concerns when it comes to the elementary school students. I've heard a lot of information about the middle school and the high school, and I'm hearing that there's a lot more flexibility with the elementary school students, and I agree that with them being assigned a teacher, that it is beneficial. However, the teacher is not designated for just their remote students. They're available on Wednesdays for 30 minutes, and it's not for them to teach any material. It's for them to share information about what's going on for the week, or, for example, they wanted us to know about iReady. I chose remote because I have the benefit to work from home. I've been a remote employee since 2016. So my thought process was, there are some parents that's got to go to work. If we overpopulate the school, everybody will be at home. So I was trying to think in terms of being a team player and ensuring that, my children would still receive the benefits of a traditional student by being a remote student. Specifically, there was guidance that was given out regarding remote students, and they said that they would have a similar academic pathway as a traditional student, but in a flexible, fully online environment. That is not happening. As a 3rd grader, rising 3rd grader, who as a 2nd grader was progressing on his report card, all 2s all the way down, and then his last semester to get all 3s, and then asking him as one of his assignments to look in an encyclopedia and give a written paragraph, 3 to 5 paragraphs about Mexico. I didn't think was teaching him anything about the basics of regrouping from last year and what he needs to be learning as a 3rd grader. The other thing was in respect to some information that was provided too about the curriculum for kindergarten to 8th grade. It specifically said all instruction will be monitored, and that intervention and instructional support will be provided throughout the virtual format. I contacted Shannon and we spoke briefly on the phone. She did advise that if kids failed a particular subject matter, that it would be given back to them twice to correct. Now, if they fail the 2nd time, where's the instruction and intervention to ensure they meet the material? I can help my child do it, but one, we're dealing with keyboarding because he's not familiar with the keyboard, so we have to take time to do that. He's still learning to spell, so it's a matter of, I tell him, spell it the best way you can so that the teacher can see your deficiencies and your ability to spell or make sentences. And then you're dealing with the fact that he needs to be able to draft a complete sentence with a subject, action, verb, and the ending of the sentence. And so he doesn't even know how to write a sentence and what should be included in the sentence, but he's asked to do these assignments in Odysseyware. I asked specifically, was Odysseyware demoed, and was it demoed by a student of what you kind of would refer to as a B student, or possibly a C student? It is not a program that a kid can work from independently. The instructions itself
are very intimidating. As far as the interaction, I understand from Shannon that there's some discussion about some tutorials that will take place possibly before school or after school, and tutorials are fine. However, in my opinion, and I'm not an educational expert or specialist, tutorials are for reinforcement. I'm asking for my child to receive the same enrichment opportunities as any traditional student that he should be afforded. I don't think he should have anything less because he's in a remote setting, meaning there is no video. I heard earlier there was discussion that, oh, there's video, and obviously where periodically there's video. But for example, today on multiplication for 2 digits, there was no video. There was material. There was discussion on, or there was information shared that you can use a feature within Odyssey where that will read out the information for you. For a third grader, he has to highlight, and again, we're getting used to the computer. He has to highlight the entire page. And then there's a GPS type voice that is very robotic and frustrating for me as an adult, that I know he's like, what did she say? What is she doing? So he disengaged. We did meet the teacher. He was very excited. I finally convinced them that we're going to do remote learning. First day of Odyssey, he said, will my teacher see me? I said, no. Will my classmates see me? I said, no. Will I get to talk to my teacher? I said, no. He disengaged immediately. He will watch, he will sit there, but with no interaction, it has not been successful. I'm very discouraged as a parent that my child is not getting an adequate education. The primary concerns, just to recap, is the program itself and its use, the interaction. I was under the impression that there was going to be some type of interaction with the teacher as far as what you possibly mentioned with, for example, WhatsApp, where there's some type of pre-recorded where they could hear some information, answer some questions, and then follow up with some type of quiz or test at the end. Oh, bringing up a very good point. The quizzes in Odysseyware for 3rd and 4th graders requires that you be familiar with the content that you completed earlier in the week. However, you no longer have access to the material once you've turned in all of your notes. So the instructor from the teachers, which are doing an excellent job, this is not a ding on the teachers, but the instructions for the teachers were, well, the kids should take notes as they complete the material so that when it's time for the quiz, they have something to reference back to. Now, I can take the notes for him, but my understanding was these would be assignments and things that he could do independently to learn and to be able to trigger where there are deficiencies. So those are my concerns. I am really concerned again with Odysseyware. If someone could please, I heard earlier also that Pathways was success and Edgenuity has been a success. Has that example with elementary age children? And if so, I would love to hear some success stories. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think a lot of this goes back to what is the expectation? Are the elementary students expected to work independently on these assignments? Or is the expectation that parents will sit with them and work through it with them?
Well, if we're a child who goes remote, the expectation would have to be if they're an early reader that they would have assistance from the parent to help them to read their class. I will say that, as she mentioned, that Odysseyware does have accessibility features where it can read, and the reason it's robotic is because it meets federal guidelines for accessibility. So it has to be a certain type of voice. And so it has that feature in there. But I was surprised to hear about the expectation for elementary remote teachers is that they're daily contact with students, whether it's through the platform or having, I know Wednesday or Google sets up for Google Meet. So I'll check with that teacher because that's not the expectation. And so it surprises me because that's being brought up like that because of we've been working with faculty. So I will definitely double check on that. But we do have plans in place for students. There is a feature if the child is struggling with programming. As she mentioned, our teachers, we work with them to know that there might be some for additional instruction for the student. There are accessibility features within. We have other programs that we also use for intervention. But remember, these are 3 remote students who selected the remote option. So they do have a teacher in elementary that's assigned to the student.
we also are budgeting significant amounts of dollars because we realize that while remote is certainly an option, that there is a big chance because of absenteeism last year and the fact that there may be some kids who need additional help, that there will be more remediation and tutoring required moving forward. And so we have budgeted, we have any funds budgeted to that as we move along. But I would do, as far as the Odyssey Ware and the Pathways program, that's not a program that we've ever offered for elementary kids. The Pathways program that we've been utilizing pre-COVID was designed for high school and middle school kids. So it's never been a program that we've ever put an elementary kid in to
We actually have, you would have known it as Compass Odyssey. And so we did use it in our elementary a few years ago with some of our students as an intervention tool. And one thing too, I'd like to mention, our third graders now on the ACAP summative state assessment, they do have to write an essay. That's part of the assessment. And so it is a lot of the ELA standards, most recent ELA standards. So I think some of the first week of school? Not the first week of school. I will tell you that starting in second grade with support responses, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And we are evaluating content constantly. I do feel like that is probably a little bit of a struggle. I think go back after we talk, so we back and look at that lesson. And I think I got the leaders, I do want to talk to you about something else. But yeah, and things like that, those kinds of questions, like you providing that information to me last week was extremely valuable to me. And so we are constantly, that was one of the things we did look at. That's a little weight of an assignment, especially as, if we had, hopefully we'll never have to do this again. But if we do, we know we got to do a lot of front loading on the so we don't have to jump into the program. If we could just drill it in our teachers, we might have to go send them 4 months in 2 weeks. So we got to have everybody time the program, everybody going through and seeing. But all of the things you brought up are very valid comments. And you helped me tremendously last week when you provided feedback to me. That was extremely helpful.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that I don't know, to be honest with you, at the elementary level, we have figured out a way to assign a remote teacher to every kid. So if there are things that need to be improved on, that's conversations with teachers and the schools, and let's get those things fixed. But from a district level, our biggest thing for me and the board is, are we providing the resources for people, and are we allocating resources, whether that be personnel, whether that be personnel or professional development, or the tools that they need. Now, certainly, here comes the monitoring part of it. That's my responsibility, not their part. But to be honest with you, most of the things that I've heard haven't been elementary related. So it doesn't mean they come with this. We would certainly follow up conversations about that. So.
Other comments? Please.
I'm Shelley. I have a 7th grader, and I had talked to Angie today after the morning meeting about having Pelham City teachers teaching our Pelham City students. And you had made the comment that you didn't want, special ed or anything like that to be made a joke of on social media, and I get that. But here's another suggestion. Have we offered Pelham City teachers, if 40% of the students are opting for full remote, how many teachers handle those 40% of students? Can those teachers be offered to teach remotely from their homes? And then that way there's not any, special ed embarrassments or anything to be made fun of. I don't think people would make fun of their teachers if they're wanting their teachers. Teachers want to teach our kids. So that was just something else about having the connection between our kids and our teachers. And COVID will go away one day, and then we will all come back. But I just feel like this remote, and I have a fully remote student because, like you said, we're trying to be team players and make room for the other students who need to be in the buildings because parents have to work. you know, I don't want to shortchange my child for trying to be a team player. I want my child to interact with his teachers.
And you're
I don't
saying,
think that's an unfair request, Shelley. I don't think that's an unfair ask.
Okay.
I do think that trying to figure out when, and again, look, I don't know. I think there will be changes in education even moving forward, even when we go all back to, there's going to be some saying, hey, we like this.
This is the 21st century.
We like this thing. I do think that moving forward, figuring out a way that you can do remote and connect with a teacher. But our current challenge is again, as I mentioned earlier, is, okay, we only have one chemistry teacher. And so that, we can hire 2 chemistry teachers and we can hire 2 everything, and all of a sudden you start doubling your staff. So I'm not saying that we're going to have to look at allocating more resources from a staffing issue. That may be something that we have to look at, but that I think is our challenge, is at the secondary level. I think I said that at the very beginning. That I think all of these issues that are being brought up are things that I know when I listen to our people, and I think can be resolved, tweaked, fixed. That's the one that I think we got to continue having a conversation about. So it's a valid concern. I don't have an answer for it right now. Doesn't mean we're not thinking about it. And especially if we were doing long-term planning and what's this going on in the future, I think we'd have more time. So, we're probably looking at quick fixes right now the best we can until we get to a point where we can really wrap our hands around learning and at the secondary level.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
Other comments?
Just communicate more. Dr. Cofield, and you first announced that we were going to stagger the mask mandate. You mentioned in that board meeting that parents need to have positive attitude to help bolster the children so that they get what they need to do in the schools. And we need to do the same thing. There are a lot of parents here who care about their kids, and I think that that's promising. If we have more communication about how the decisions are made, when the decisions are made, and the parents are included in some of this evaluation. You mentioned teachers got together and decided some things, but you got teachers in this room right now, right? Because we're all trying to educate our children and some and moving them along. If you involve us and communicate to the parents, I think as a community and your prayers that we be united, we can help the entire school system. So just talk to us more. The educational experience is not aligning with the educational commitments, period.
Well, man, we get tons of emails. We have a Pelham Communications email where people are free to provide us communications at all times. We are constantly getting information from that. We send out, we're in the first week of school and we've already sent out a massive email. I think we communicated to the parents later this afternoon on the issue related to our schools. You've gotten 2 email communications about issues related to your kids. I'm not saying we can't communicate more, but pretty much we provided tools where people can provide us input at any point in time that they want to, and those things are being read, and when we have big issues, those things are pushed out to the board, so they're aware of those issues. So
I agree, and while you're on the topic of communicating with the board, I would like to praise Angie and Bob, because they respond all the time. All the time, they respond, and I never have a concern, even if I don't like the answer. I know that I'm going to get an answer. I know that it'll be teed up here. Kudos to them.
On the communication issue, I would appreciate if you guys would at some point, I'm Chris Hill, at some point think about creating a parental advisory committee for the board, for the schools, whatever. Because there's a lot of us that have a lot of talent and a lot of capabilities, and we can provide some great feedback and some great advisory capacity for everybody. There's something to think about going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
we do have a PTO advisor.
Parental input committees.
Never asked, never been asked. Anything like that.
I know, sir. We also have 6,000 parents. We have 3,000 kids, so.
Great. So now the email saying, hey, we need parents.
Just moving forward, I think one thing that this has taught us is that we could probably incorporate keyboarding in the elementary school. Because spending 10 minutes trying to find the W is not it.
We actually did provide curriculum last year, and students worked on it all year.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
We actually did last year, students worked in curriculum for keyboarding all year long, K through 8.
It was a keyboarding course or completing material.
It's a course that they go in and record and track their information and learning how to keyboard and the correct hand positions and what to work on.
That was not in the book. When you go in there. No, seriously, when you meet the teacher, that was not one of the things identified that they do or have done, so.
And
That's
they've
good
all learned how to, we share a computer lab.
Computer lab.
I will say now though, that they all have, we will have devices, K8, what you're saying, we totally agree. We've got, I mean, in the AI the state test is all online, requires from second graders and us to type their answers in. That scares me.
That's a big issue.
And
We're gonna
so,
take a test on with a computer now, and not all kids are, so that's
yeah, so.
valid. That we have raised at the state level, wait a minute, you're gonna test our third graders on the keyboard, and they may have the knowledge, but they may not be able to transfer the knowledge, yeah.
So we are definitely, that is extremely valid point, that, we're definitely, I feel like, we have the devices and every kid will have one. And so we encourage our teachers, so if we do go full traditional, all teachers are teaching, I would fully expect us to still have remote opportunities in place, because like every assessment we're gonna take from here on out is gonna be online.
If we do go back 5 days full-time, traditional schools, are the children that are doing remote currently, will they be able to remain remote students if we don't want to?
Kids can opt into remote at any time. So there will be, I get this email too, there will be some parents that will not, if we decide to go back to full 5 days a week, that won't be comfortable because we won't be able to do the 6 feet of spacing. So that option is available anytime.
All right, well, we appreciate everyone's comments. We're gonna move on with the board meeting. I believe we're on item 10. Right? Okay.
Yes, we have the budget hearing, and I will go very quickly. In this year's budget information, and board members, actually, you have another notebook that Sarita has prepared for you. Or do they have it? I don't see mine with it.
It looks like a note.
I'm just laying upstairs.
We're going to go through the PowerPoint while they retrieve your notebook. But you have the PowerPoint. I bet that I was supposed to grab it.
She doesn't need to go up. Sarita, we can look at this right now.
No, as well. So, in your notebook, we're going to retrieve that have been left upstairs. The PowerPoint is the first thing in there. And so I'm going to take you through this, and for the public, because there will be opportunities if you want to ask questions after the budget hearing. This is the first budget hearing that we're going to have. We're required by the state to have a second budget hearing. We will do that on Tuesday, September the 8th at 6:30 p.m. at this location. Our numbers are up again, our board members. Last year, 3,349. Right now, at the beginning of this school year, we're 3,394. We've gone up in the number of students every year. Our staffing now, we have almost 400 staff members. That's 248 certified people and 147 support. Some of those are contracts. Some of those, a small number of those are contracts. Whoops, I went wrong. Okay, our money comes from 3 sources: federal, state, and local. We are one of the highest funded, locally funded school systems. We are very blessed to be in the area where the revenues are very good, and 50% of our money comes from local funding. And most every school system across the state of Alabama, the largest percentage is state funding. Here we're very fortunate. Our budget is almost $45 million. That's a large budget, 1 month of operating balance for us is $3.4 million. We are estimating at the end of this year that we will finish with approximately $11.8 million, which is equal to about 3.5 months of reserve. This is a budget. We have not spent as much time on our budgets this year because of COVID and other things. We've had 6 years of experience with our budgets, and so we think we can eyeball it pretty closely. So this is a projected number, but we are anticipating a surplus of $745,000 this year. Note that we had a lot of federal COVID funding that we, of course, spent with time with you today looking at, which has helped us pay for some other things. But we are expecting a surplus budget this year. We expect this year in excess of 2 months of reserves. The total amount of reserves that we end up will depend on the number of projects that the board approves throughout the year. So I mentioned to you, we talked about the different projects that are out there. Where we finish will depend on the number of projects that are to be determined. Okay. Here's a snapshot. If you were to look at, since we started the school system, our fund balance, we have continually built our reserves. I will say the one reason that we do have a little higher anticipated reserve is that we had to put back some money for Pelham Oaks, the classroom additions at Pelham Oaks, the 10 to 12 classrooms. There is a state bond issue that is now going to pay for that, which that was very good for us. Had it not been for that, that $11.7 million would be anticipated to be around the $7 million or $6 to $7 million mark. We are 7th in the state in local revenues per child. That's very good. That's very strong. This is based on 2018 data, which is the last time the state sent out these reports. We're also 8th in the state in percentage of the budget allocated for capital projects or debt services. We have improved in our first 4-year period. We are still first in the state. If you look at the 4-year period, we're in there with Pelham, Alabaster, Saraland, and Auburn. What is the common denominator there? Those are new school systems, or Auburn, which is probably one of the fastest growing school systems in the state of Alabama. So that's kind of the common denominator. Our administrative services costs are still below average for similar-sized systems, 3.2%. At a future board meeting, I would give you a rundown so you can see what other people are spending in those areas. Of course, our funding is supported by the 1 cent sales tax and a 0.5 cent county-wide. Things that aren't fully funded by the state are salaries and benefits. We pay for additional teachers. Our teachers make more money than state-funded teachers pay at the state level. We pay for extended contracts for principals, assistant principals, guidance counselors. All those things add up. We're spending almost $2.7 million out of our local budget to offset salaries and benefits. We're spending an additional $135,000 for school nurses. We used some COVID funding this year to offset, but we've also added 3 nurses in our schools this year to help deal with COVID issues. These are all contract nurses, so that as the needs go down, then we don't have to use those, but those are in our budget. We are currently have $0 local money in transportation. I think our transportation budget from the state is like $1.6 million, but we are very fortunate this year that the amount of local funds that we were having to spend, we were covering everything with that state allotment. I think that's part because of the management of our transportation program. Our guys do a great job, but also our bus fleet is so new that our maintenance costs are pretty low. We get federal dollars, almost $709,000 of special ed money. This is from IDA Part B, $345,000 of Title I money, $87,000 of Title II, $57,000 of Title III. You have an internal document that you see in our curriculum instruction budget. You can see how we spend all of it. Most of these are spent on professional development, materials and supplies. In our special ed budget, we fund 5 teachers, a psychometrist, a a lot of that's used for services. Unfunded mandate claims, we are still, we have seen a significant increase in the amount of state dollars we receive for English language learners. That allocation was increased to $261,000, which allowed us to fund an additional, not added teachers, but 2 teachers that we were funding out of local. We're still spending $1.4 million in local to provide services for our kids in need related to special education. We align all of our budgets to our strategic plan. We'll go through this fairly quickly. So in school safety, here are our biggest expenditures. The mental health contract that we have with Central Alabama Wellness is $93,886. We're spending $60,343 for SROs out of the schools. The city helps us greatly with that. Last year we spent $80,000 with SROs, but we did use some at-risk funding to offset that cost a little bit this year, so that went down. I do want you to know, as I mentioned to you already, we're purchasing 12 new buses, but we're utilizing state funds. None of that will be paid out of local. Those are some of our biggest expenditures related to school safety. We've got $217,000 this year set aside in curriculum. Now, we spent a lot on that on curriculum, but a lot of it's in state and federal. This is an increase in what we've done in the past. A lot of it has to do because of the extensive professional development and the resources that we're having to buy in addition because of all the technology, all the different learning things and training that our teachers need because of COVID. It's not been a normal year. We've had to spend more money. We're spending $855,000. Our fund that we call Great Educators, how we're trying to recruit and retain teachers. About $477,000 of that is for teacher pay above what the state allocates. I think we have had 2 pay raises. I think we have a 3rd on the agenda. That probably would have happened this year had we not been scared away from COVID this past spring and the impact on the economy that at that time we were very unsure about. And this budget is also the extraordinary compensation. And while we've not approved the academic supplements, that will be upcoming at a coming up board meeting. That money is in this budget as well. We continue to spend more money. This is just to show how we've grown in our commitment to help recruit and retain teachers and all those things. When we first started, it was about $234,000 and teachers were being paid above the state lecture. So we kick in things every year. That number is down a little bit on what it was last year. We haven't changed a thing. It's just that some of the things in the supplements for academics, like mentoring and things that we paid for in the past, there's state funds for a lot of those things. So there have been no programs reduced in what we're doing to help recruit and retain teachers related to supplements or mentoring or paying or any of those things. Just sometimes some extra funds that help pay for those things. But pretty much everything that we've been doing in the past in this area, we're going to continue to do this year. And I know y'all want to have conversations about moving forward in next year, and we're certainly ready to have those conversations. Our technology budget continues to be large. Actually, we're spending a lot more money in technology, but we're using a lot of the COVID, the CARES Act funding at the federal level. But we have significantly invested more money in technology because of the need of the number of devices. We're in really good shape compared to a lot of people. The fact that there's a lot of school systems that things are on back order. We have Chromebooks on back order as well. Y'all need to know that. It's just that we had enough that when the back orders hit, we had enough in our system to spread them out. And luckily, the number of kids who are at remote, some of those have devices at home and did not need devices. But we still have technology on back order. If every kid in our system needed a Chromebook right now, we would not have enough Chromebooks at this time. Again, we didn't help. I thought I had somewhere remote. Extracurricular. These are all the things. Our largest expenditure here is 108 supplements in band and drama and volleyball and softball and football and everything. $567,000 there. Staffing, of course, as always, is our biggest expenditure, almost $2 million, $7.2 in discretionary to cover certified staff that were not funded at the state level and all of our support staff, to include secretaries and custodians and all those kinds of things. Our operations, almost $2 million. Of course, the utility bills, the highest one in that, about $930,000. Community support and planning, almost $100,000, the largest in our budget for communications, materials, and initiatives. Payments and projects, $4.2 million is our state foundation program match. That is what they would hold from us at the state level because of what's called the 10 mil match. It's basically an equity formula that the state uses. School systems that are more affluent have a larger match. School systems that are less affluent have a smaller match. We're blessed that we're in a place where we have more revenue, but on the flip side of that, our match is higher. The district tax payment is a part of the separation agreement with Shelby County from years ago. This is kids who still live in Pelham but are continuing in Shelby County schools as they filter their way out. That has gone down significantly every year and will continue to go down. That's our existing debt payments related to buildings and new construction. I don't think that number was totaled on your spreadsheet document that I sent you, but if you were to total all those things, that's what it adds up to. And we do have about $1.9 million in this budget for us to have more conversation. I think I told you today that the area that I would like to focus on is Pelham High School as we continue to renovate that campus. But those decisions, of course, have not been made, and there's much more discussion to be had regarding that. So the positive impact of local funding, our 1 cent sales tax, about $5.5 million is what we're estimating. The district taxes, about $6.6 million. This was really important in the beginning of our school system to share with people because before we became our own school system, of course, there wasn't a 1 cent tax. That was done by our city council to start this school system. And also that $6.6 million in district taxes that we're now collecting that stays inside of Pelham. Some of that was going to Pelham, but it was also going to other schools in Shelby County. So when the council made the decision to create our school system, not only did we get the 1 cent tax, but we also got full control of that district tax, which is huge as well. I feel good about our finances, our planning. We've been fiscally responsible. We plan for our growth. Our growth is hitting us. We're adding the classrooms at Pelham. That will be ready by next school year. So we shouldn't have that. We're crowded and we're back, but relief is on the way. And I think that the board's done a really good job with that. So at this time, I know I flew through that. So in your note, you have this PowerPoint. And then, of course, if you want to ask any questions of Sharita, you got all the spreadsheets that have been shared with you. I think mine sort of makes sense. And then you have all these documents that we are required by the state that is not reading great to me because this is what all the accountants look at, all these huge rows of numbers and all that kind of stuff. So if you have questions about any of that, you need to call Sarita and she'll be glad to work with you over the next couple of weeks to understand that. I understand the stuff in the other format. This gets a little difficult for me. These are the things that we are required to turn into the state. Okay? The state doesn't get the information that you got this morning. They get all this information. This is what's required of us to send into the state. We went over this information this morning. Remember, we got another meeting in 2 weeks. Remember, it's still a budget. Some of the bigger pieces of this budget, like project stuff, still will have to come before the board. I'll be quiet. Sarita, if you have any comments, board members, you have questions for me or Sarita?
One thing I just want to point out is our average teaching experience is 13 years. And we have 69% of our teachers with higher degrees, higher than a bachelor's degree.
All right, I'm sorry. I was focused on the lot.
Yeah, I'm good because I'm here every night when they go out. So, like I said, the average teaching experience here is about 13 years. which that's a pretty average. I mean, it's right middle. So, right. And then the percentage of teachers with advanced degrees is 69%. So that's any teacher that's above a bachelor's degree. That's tremendous to have 69% with higher degree. And then this year, we actually have 8 National Board Certified teachers. We're very proud of that. We only had 2 last year. So we've got a program in place to encourage teachers to do that, to get that certification. And so, and when they do it, they get a $5,000 supplement every year up before Christmas. So that's always a good
Incentive.
incentive for them to do
How
that.
many we got in the training this year, Shannon? 13.
We had
Good.
6 get their certification last year, I
Yeah,
believe.
right.
So the possibility that we're going to go from 2 to over 10 after this year.
Yes, we're already at 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there are some sheets in this packet that's by, there's a system total, and then there's by each location, and it'll break down how many teachers, how many of them are earned units from the state, how many of them, if we have any local, what's federal, what's state, other state. And then I'll have like a projected enrollment for the year, and a projected amount that we would spend at that particular location. And then all those sheets, like you said, that nobody can read but an accountant. Sometimes we have trouble with them because the numbers are all run together. And then we're required to give our salary schedules, so they're in there as well. And then on the very back is a response sheet that the board or the public's welcome to fill out and turn in for any questions or comments or recommendations or anything like that. So.
Yeah, the one area that we have taken a hit because of COVID, one area is in our CNP program, the child nutrition program, because we have so many fewer kids who are participating. That is the one area that we're taking somewhat of a hit. Okay, board members, do you have any questions for Sarita or for me?
Just a general question, to Sarita, any red flags, anything cause you concern?
No concern. I mean, everything looks great. And I was encouraging that our property tax was up tremendously, which offset what we're down in our city sales tax. You know, COVID did have a little bit of an impact on our sales tax. So luckily it wasn't tremendous as of yet. So, but the ad valorem tax is up. And I did speak with Mr. Armstrong with the county commission to find out why it went up so much from the prior years. And he said there was a lot of new homes that went online with them in the last year. So it's, you know, to a lot of the new home development.
All right, this time we'll open up any questions from the public about the budgets. I know that was fast and furious, but I think a lot of people probably ready to go home. Oh, we got new business.
Yes, we do.
I have 3 recommendations for the board tonight. Our supplements. Our item 1, of course, this is what we do every year. But you can see, board members, everything that we pay, from the drama person to the volleyball coach to the whatever. They're all on there. 108 different supplements that are paid. Item 2 is to approve the 2020-2021 miscellaneous pay guidelines. That basically just says if a teacher does working in an at-risk program or tutoring, it sets the hourly rate that we're going to pay. Those kinds of things. That is the exact same as it was last year. There are no changes at all to that document from last year. Item 3 is approve the innovation home flexibility waiver, allowing use of the local developed kindergarten assessment tool. The state has a new assessment tool called Allokit. And we were going to have to send our teachers for training, and we were right in the middle of training for all this other new stuff, and we think ours is good enough and does what we wanted to do, so we requested a waiver so that we would not have to send our teachers through that training. Doesn't mean that in the future, if we look at it, we decide that we want to do that, we have that option. Right now, all we have to do is send that in and they will approve that. So Those, and that requires board approval. Those are the three items I have in front of you tonight requesting.
Okay, we do have those three items. Does anyone wish to any of these items to be voted on individually or have a question about it? All right, there being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve in a second.
I'll make a motion, we approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Under discussion. There being none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And those pass unanimously. Okay, we had a lengthy public recognition with regard to the start of school. Any other general comments? Anyone wish to address the board about anything? Okay, there being none, get us to board comments. Anybody?
I just like to take this opportunity to thank Sarita for your hard work putting this together. It's always so clear, and thank you for putting it in layman's terms.
Kind of.
Well, that's mostly Dr. Cofield's work, so.
Thank you, Dr.
I didn't hear a thing.
Just like,
I have to take what he comes up with and get it in my budget. So.
Other board comments?
Well, I know we already talked about this earlier, all the COVID stuff. I really do want to make sure, like Angie has already said, that Shannon, you and the rest of your staff and the central office in general just realizes that it may not always feel that way, but we really do appreciate all that y'all do. And we know that this whole thing's been relentless and that y'all have been working your tails off. I hope the public knows that, but you are appreciated. So, and just want you to know that.
and Julie too, you've put in a lot of work. Thank you.
Julie's my new best
I'm never going to best friend.
Our staff has worked. These days, there are people that everybody works, and there are those people who go above and beyond, and you don't even question because you know that's in their blood and in what they do. We've got several people who have just gone above and beyond. We continue to get it is a very frustrating time for families, for teachers, for students. The frustrations sometimes that people have with us, it's like we're frustrated too because we feel like things ought to come down. We ought to get guidance, it ought to be sooner. So, I mean, it bubbles all the way up. I'm not knowing anybody above us. I'm sure they're dealing with their set of issues and circumstances that make it that way as well. But, I have to make sure that if we've got to remain calm, we can work through this. We're going to work through this. We've got the right people in place. We've got great parents that have done nothing to support our schools from day one. We have great kids. We have great teachers. We have great staff. If we can't do this, nobody. So we're going to do it. It's just the frustration level because of all these different circumstances are the level that, quite frankly, I've never seen. And you can tell it in people's voices when they call. You can read it in between the lines and emails, and there's a lot of frustration there. And so, we're going to. What's the title of our plan? We're going to press on, and that's where we're going to do it. Board members, this whole thing about returning to school is stressful. How much do y'all get paid for this?
No.
I think it's zero. Right? You're all volunteers and you all do this just as a public service. So I don't think any of us, well, besides me, I don't think board members signed up to be board members thinking they're going to have to make decisions in a crisis like COVID. I know our teachers didn't sign up thinking about the spread of a disease and those kinds. So everybody keeps talking about unprecedented times. Well, it is, but we're gonna get through it.
Well spoken, sir. Anybody have anything else? Reminder of the words of Davy Crockett. Be sure you're right, then go ahead. I think that's a good thing to close on. I'm all for it. Well, thank everybody for coming out. Really appreciate the comments. The input's always important to all of us. And I think we made some progress. With that in mind, I'll
Your announcements on the back.
Thank you. We do have a regularly scheduled board meeting. Next one is September 28th, 2020, the work session. And location, work session time and location is to be determined. And of course, that evening will be the regular board meeting. That's September 28th, 2020.
And we also have the September the 8th.
Budget.
Which will probably also make, I'm meeting with the staff tomorrow. I know we got to approve like academic supplements and some other things, so.
Okay. Any further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
Just never know when to speak up.